Thomas Aquinas, Pinnacle to Obsolescence in 200 Years, and Why It Matters. This is kind of like my master thesis. Been working on this for many, many years, this general idea. And this kind of lays it out. A lot of the, not a lot, probably the bulk of the weekly columns I write and then podcasts here revolve around this theme. And this is like the kind of like letting the cat out of the bag of what I'm getting at. So anyway, so it's 1545, the year 1545. The city of Trento in today's northern Italy, the Council of Trent. The Bible was placed on the altar. Next to it, the officials put Thomas Aquinas' Summa Theologica to symbolize the Catholic Church's reverence for the saint's work, the greatest of the Catholic philosophers and scholastics. It may have been Thomas Aquinas' high watermark. Less than 200 years later, Christian Wolff, the world's leading philosopher immediately before Immanuel Kant, published his complete lectures. Scholasticism had fallen out of favor by then, but Wolff sought to preserve it and give it a place in the history of philosophy. The exemplar of scholasticism chosen by Wolff? Francisco Suarez, who lived from 1548 to 1617. Not Thomas Aquinas, who lived from 1225 to 1274. To Christian Wolff, Suarez was not only the latest of the scholastics, but the deepest and most profound of them. And Suarez was an essentialist. Just like Wolff, just like every philosopher of the time, Bacon, Descartes, Leibniz, Spinoza, they were all essentialists. And all of them had forgotten that the truly greatest among scholastic philosophers, Aquinas, was an existentialist. All right, from ancient Greece through modern philosophy, it was widely accepted that essence took priority over existence. All right, what does this mean? Well, basically this. To know something exists, you need to know its essence. Therefore, essence is prior to existence. If you believe this, you're an essentialist. But if you believe existence is prior to essence, you're an existentialist. Now, essences are those things that define a class of things. If you find the thing that distinguishes one class from another, you found its essence. For the class elephant, for instance, that thing might be its trunk. For humans, that thing is the rational faculty. Once you discern a trunk or a creature with a rational faculty, you identify the existence of an elephant or a human, respectively. Essences, in other words, are fundamentally definitional. They define classes of things. If you have essence X, you're expected to look like, behave like a thing with essence X. If you are, in other words, to be like a thing with essence X. Quote, to be, unquote, is roughly equivalent to exist. Hence, the idea that existence comes from essence. Once you know a thing's essence, you can know its existence. Now, essences can also bleed into and become confused with characteristics that Aristotle called accidents. These are things that help define an individual within a class. Both essences and accidents are definitional. So, the rational faculty, a common trait to all persons on person A, is an essence. The 6 feet of height on person A is an accident. Not all of us are 6 feet tall. Now, Thomas Aquinas would have agreed with the fundamental point of the essentialist from above. In other words, he would agree, if you have essence X, you're expected to be like a thing with essence X. To be is roughly equivalent to exist. Hence the idea that existence comes from essence. Essence is prior to existence. But Aquinas penetrated deeper. All right, this is not easy to understand. So listen carefully. Maybe hit that little button where you rewind 30 seconds. You may need to read or rewind 20 times and contemplate it for eternity. I'm still unpacking it in my mind. I've been struggling with it off and on for many, many years. Now, Aquinas drew a distinction between being and the act of existence. For Aquinas, the fundamental meaning of what it is to be a being is to be a haver or possessor of the act of existence. He used this analogy: a man is a runner by his act of running. Similarly, man is a being by his act of existing. The act of existing, and that's a crucial phrase, the act of existing was for Aquinas supreme, prior to all else. The essentialists might be right. Essence is prior to existence because we know a thing exists by its essences or by its essence, but there is something prior to both, the act of existence. Or to put it more precisely, Aquinas would concede that essence is prior to being because we know a thing's being by its essence, but there's something prior to both, existence itself. Aquinas' distinction between being and existence is still debated. I think they basically fall into three different camps. One, some philosophers agree with him. You have the act of existence, then essence. Some philosophers don't think there's a difference between being and the act of existence. And third, some philosophers are agnostic on the point, but don't see a need to add existence to being. They don't see a need for the act of existence. Now, I believe Aquinas was obviously right, but I understand why some philosophers don't see a need to add the act of existence to being. In other words, I put myself in category 1 with Aquinas. I reject category 2. There's clearly a difference. And I respect category 3. I mean, it is axiomatic to the point of absurd common sense that in order to be a being, you must have existence. In other words, to be engaged in the act of existence. So it's not even worth talking about. So I do appreciate the position of the philosophers in category 3. Those just don't see what it adds to the analysis. But I part company with those in part 3 on the impact of essence. Essence is prior to being, just like the essentialists say, but it's not prior to existence, or the act of existence. If we fail to acknowledge a difference between existence and being, we give essence priority to all else, making it queen, so to speak, because the fundamental point of the essentialists, i.e., that without essence we can't know being, can't be denied. That's true. But that would give essence too much importance or power, as it were, because there is something even prior to being and essence, the act of existence itself. So essence might be queen and prior to being, but the act of existence is king and prior to all. This was disregarded after Thomas Aquinas and slowly fell into obsolescence by 1600. I think the whole world of philosophy had completely forgotten that distinction, the whole act of existence, and all modern philosophy and thought and pursuits and how we think was all premised on the idea that there is no act of existence. Everything is just essence and being. I mean, I believe that the act of existence's obsolescence is the defining trait of modernity, much to our detriment. I also think our culture has been groping for the past 200 years to reclaim it in some form or fashion. Exhibit A is our culture's interest in the Tao. We have an immense interest in the Eastern religions, and the Eastern religions never lost the sense of the act of existence. And Ian McGilchrist goes into this, by the way, in The Master and the Emissary. The Tao is, I believe, the act of existence. Our culture is acutely interested in it because it's in the Tao that we perceive that something that is missing. The reality of the Tao, why it went missing in Western culture, the effects, and our efforts to reclaim it will continue to be a theme of these Monday podcasts and columns. So keep listening. Look for on the Daily Eudemon, on this podcast, look for the tag or the category "Act or Existence Strikes Back." That phrase symbolizes kind of everything I'm going for here, which is we lost scope, we lost sight of the act of existence, and now it's striking back and has been striking back for 200 years. As always, thanks for listening.